Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Family Law. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, this is a very interesting episode, and obviously it's still very prevalent and relevant, and I think it will always be a prevalent and relevant episode because it's about vaccination versus anti-vax. Now, obviously, there's a conversation about, obviously, when this episode came out, it was probably during the pandemic that they probably filmed this because it came out last year, I believe. And then it's obviously that was still in the middle of COVID and everything. I mean, who's to say once again, that's a whole larger conversation. Are we outside of that and everything, right? But anti-vaxxing has always been a thing, but I feel like it got way more prevalent when it was such a big thing like COVID. I feel like that conversation about not being down for vaccinations that conversation was a lot bigger than I feel like I'd ever really heard of it in my lifetime. Not I heard it here and there over my lifetime, never my immediate life, but more so because I just was oh, I guess just everyone does that. That's just the thing to do. And then when you get older and you hear in the news, people are yeah, people don't vax and stuff. You're oh, interesting. So, and it's an interesting conversation because obviously Abby is represent Elaine and her daughter Talia because Elaine's father is dying. He's got cancer and she wants to take her daughter to see her grandfather, before it's too late. But obviously her and her ex Sean are divorced and now it's a situation of he wants her to get vaccinated. And I thought it was such an interesting thing because it puts Talia in this very complicated space. If I'm not mistaken, and I should have looked into it, is that the little girl from Grimm? Oh God, the Nick and Hank and Woo's Balls. What was his name? I don't remember now. That actor was most recently in the short-lived show on NBC, Endgame. The Endgame. He was the president in that. That actor, him and Adeline had a daughter. I want to say it's Diane or Diana. I believe that's the same actress, just older. Because I was looking at her, I was why does she look so familiar? I think that's what I recognize her from. That was 5 years ago, so, because the show ended in 2017. So either way, it might be the same actress, it might not be, but it puts her in a very complicated spot because she's hearing from both her parents. Her dad's oh, if you don't get vaccinated, you're going to get boils all over you and you're going to die. Your mom's telling you if you get vaccinated, you're going to die. It's you don't know what to believe. And I thought it was a very poignant point that Lucy made. It's you can love your parents and completely disagree with them. There's certain beliefs in my general family that I'm yeah, I don't agree with them. I don't love them any less. I'm I wish you kind of didn't think that way, but it's I can't change how you feel, whether it's just for personal reasons, whether it's for religious reasons. I don't agree. So it's kind of that same thing, which I think it's such an interesting thing because me personally, we had the whole conversation about vaccine versus non-vaccine. Anti-vaccine. It's this. Well, because I'm believe in the medical system and I trust doctors. If doctors are yeah, you should do this. It is even in this episode, it's we had to find the one doctor out of many that was yeah, vaccinations are bad. They could cause autism and issues like this in a child. So they had to go out of their way to really find this one doctor who was kind of more in line with where Elaine's thinking was. So I think that kind of speaks volumes. It's probably the statistic will probably be more maybe I don't know, 39 out of 40 doctors are pro-vaccination type. I'm throwing that statistic out there. I'm not saying that's a real statistic. That was a made-up number I made, so I don't want anyone to hold me against that. But so I kind of follow what the general medical field believes, but I'm also and maybe it's biased on my opinion. My mom's a registered nurse, so if she kind of in agreement, the same thing, it's kind of oh yeah, my mom's a part of the medical field. Other doctors are saying this. She's part of the medical field and she agrees as well. Then I'm more likely inclined. But the argument could be well, I have a very biased opinion because I have a family member in the medical field. So I think that could be an argument in itself. But yeah, so that's why I think it's such an interesting and complicated territory, especially for Abby. It's right. You represent your client, regardless of your own person. You kind of have to put your own beliefs aside. It's just hey, you don't support murder when your client is maybe guilty of murder, but your job is to defend them to the best of their ability. So Abby's doing the same thing. It's yeah, I'm going to defend you because she didn't know her friend was an anti-vaxxer until she was wait, what? It's any vaccinations? No, all vaccinations. Because apparently, I don't know if this is just at that time. Apparently, Germany had a measles issue. And it's like, yeah, like that could be a whole problem if your child isn't vaccinated, have any vaccination. So, because apparently Sean agreed to it, but it was while they were married. So he was, in his mind, it's like, oh, I agree with all your stupid, like, idiosyncrasies that maybe I don't agree with. So, and it's a complicated thing. Once again, that Talia is there having to like choose between both her parents, listening to them fight back and forth. So it's a complicated thing. And it doesn't help Abby that Daniel's kind of being a dick and isn't pulling his weight. And then he'll, after the fact, bring up this like, well, did you actually look into how Elaine's sister died? Because that was a thing for her. Like, oh, my sister died because of vaccinations. So the whole anti-vax side of things is associated with this trauma, but it's also because her mom was anti-vax. And so it's like that kind of got distilled into her. So there's that conversation. But like, Daniel didn't give any input. He didn't help out with the trial. He just sat back, blah, 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 because he's pissed at, it's not just Abigail, it's more so their dad, but it's because in his mind, it's like, right, she's suddenly getting special treatment. We'll get into Daniel's like BS right now. He is like, regardless of it all, you aren't doing your job. You're up here complaining about like, oh, I need to be partner and everything. Stop being, like, I know it's mean to say, but like, he is being a baby about it. And like, you're like, oh, I'm a half-ass my job. It's like, yeah, I'll let you do this or whatever. Who cares? It's like, she could use your help in this, because it's sad, because at one point in time, her and Daniel were getting closer. Obviously, him and Lucy were kind of on the outs for a little bit, but now it's like, oh, now this is another, like, he's kind of had an issue with both of his siblings right now, so. But ultimately, like, because of the judge they ended up getting, which is a very sly of Abby, like, you know, she's talking to the right person, trying to get them into the right courtrooms, but Frank is who she's up against, so it's like this little back and forth. Luckily, things didn't get nasty, because things could get nasty in a courtroom, and that could be an issue, but luckily they were able to handle this situation very civically. But yeah, he was representing Sean, the father. She was representing Elaine, the mother, and everything. And luckily, they were able to convince the judge to be on their side. But the next judge didn't uphold that verdict, because she's like, that child's life is going to be in danger if you let her go to Germany. So she cannot go to Germany unless she gets vaccinated. And so that just leads to more issues between Elaine and her husband, because she's thinking like, well, she's thinking that Sean is doing all this just to be vindictive. It's like, oh, I got a new hot, awesome guy in my life or whatever. So now it's this situation of Abigail's like, yeah, just get her vaccinated. It's like, I am on your side. But for her, it's like, no, you're not. Like, but it's just like, it just for Abby, she could no longer, like, for her, it's just like, right, you are not only putting your daughter in danger, you're putting other people in danger. It's actually interesting because, like, her, Talia and Nico had this whole, she's like, her perspective on things is like, right, if other people get vaccinated, it's fine. It is this personal choice thing. And that's where, because Nico was like, okay, because she's like, yeah, it's herd mentality. As long as I'm not, as long as everyone else around me is vaccinated, I don't have to be vaccinated. It's fine. He's like, okay, but that's only if everyone around you adheres to that. What about the people who decide not to be vaccinated and you're not vaccinated and you get sick? You know, that could be a whole thing in itself. So it only works if it's almost that thing of like, right, I don't have to do it because everyone else around me is doing it. It's like, well, all it takes is one or two people, maybe even a couple people not around you doing it for like that to be a bigger issue, and it could turn into something bigger. Because I think that argument probably, because that's the argument that could be made against, like, hey, you not wanting to get vaccinated is a personal choice. But the problem is you not getting vaccinated no longer becomes a just you thing. Now, if you're a recluse, I think that's another thing. But when you're out about publicly, you put other people in danger, you know, by doing that. So it's no longer like a personal choice, because your choice can now physically affect the people around you. That's where you kind of get into the rub of it. Like, it's not just a personal choice anymore when you're doing that. But once again, her mentality of like, because that's what her mom's telling her, like, right, the herd mentality of, well, let other people get vaccinated means you don't have to be either. So, and it's a complicated road, because it is a thing of like, right, people should be able to do whatever they do with their own bodies. But once again, when you are endangering other people, that's when it kind of, you know, and it's like, you, by not getting vaccinated, you are putting other people in danger. So it's a whole thing, right? So I think that's such an interesting and complicated spot. And because Abigail was having that perspective, Elaine was like, oh, I'm done talking to you. And she even tried to take Talia to Germany regardless, because Abby knew exactly what was happening the moment Talia missed her like appointment with Lucy. But the moment that happened, Abigail knew, like, oh, she's trying to run. It's like, do not do this, because you doing this will pretty much be counted as kidnapping. It's like, this is how the court's going to see it. She's like, you will go to jail. Your daughter needs you, and are you willing to go to jail for this? And she's like, I am on your side of the lane, but this is where I draw the line. Because she gets it. It's like, right, having a court-appointed situation kind of meddle in, like, determining when and how often you can see your child. She gets that, but you doing this is a whole other level thing, so... But it turns out Talia took Lucy's advice and was like, right, you can love your parents and disagree with them. You get to make your own choices. So she made the choice to get vaccinated. And it's like, when did Talia learn how to forge our signatures so well? And it's because of Nico, which I love that whole little subplot of he got in trouble at school because he's forging like parent signatures on report cards and things that lets them leave to school during lunch and stuff. And the like teacher, I guess it's like the music teacher or whatever, kind of gets on him. And he's like, yeah, because of everything going at home. I was like, for one, that was extremely judgmental of him to say that. It's like, for one, that was super unprofessional if you say that. Like, you're so matter of fact. It's like, first and foremost, this ain't your family to talk about so casually. You could be like, you can maybe imply like, oh, has anything changed at home? Like, cause yes, her situation is very public. Yes. But even, I love Frank kind of threw in his face is like, but don't talk about my like wife's situation being the only cause. My son was being bullied for weeks. Not you nor no one else at this school knew about it. Like it was actually Abigail who like dealt with it. He's like, so don't put this on my wife. And at the same time, at the worst possible timing, she's having to, do the breathalyzer. And it's just like, yeah. So can we like push this suspension back? Cause they're both in court facing off against each other. And the music teacher's looking at him like, are you crazy? So they had to make that work. And I love that she blames her dad because it's like, Harry, if you hadn't given him that calligraphy book, and he's like, wow, it is kind of messed up you did that. He's like, I mean, you are taking all the heat for it. And what did they took advantage of your good nature. He's like, yeah, I got the money out of it. He's like, well, what? It's like, yeah, $5 a pop for signatures. I'm like, how much did you make? He's like, $150. And you're like, hey, yo. And he's like, I love his grandpa's like, Harry's like, it's never too late to kind of get your like portfolio in line and stuff like that. Cause he was even proud of him. It's like, wow, being able to forge signatures. And even it came through in the end and they're like, wow, like, should we punish our son? It's like, he did something good later on with the whole Talia thing. It's like, yeah, but if he forges our signatures, he's dead meat. So, but because of that, being able to spend time with Nico this past week, cause he's forced to kind of go to work with her, ultimately ended up in a situation of Frank being like, yeah, maybe we should reconsider like the arrangement here about like how much time you're able to spend with him. So looks like things are on the up and up, because she did talk to Jerry about like, right, her and Frank slept together, but she didn't know what to make of it, because it's like, right, it's just kind of a one-time deal. Does that mean anything's really taking a step in the right direction? And Frank is, well, she said like, right, men are a lot more sentimental about sex than people the general thing is like, oh, men are able just to hit it and quit it and just like, yeah, like sex means nothing, just that. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, maybe that's the stereotype about guys, and I think the stereotype is like women will be more emotionally inclined with sex. And I think it can't all be true and not true, because I'm sure there's plenty of men and women who break both of those stereotypes for that situation when it comes to the conversation about sex, and whether they are as sentimental about it, as the other sex may be, So I just think that's such an interesting thing. But I'm also worried that it's like, because Jerry is like, right, your sobriety has to take, so don't let the AA meeting slacks. Because I hope it isn't a thing of, hey, well, because she even admits, like, yeah, I still want to have a drink like 3 times a day. But hopefully, like, just because her and Frank are heading in the right direction, hopefully that doesn't impede things and cause it to be an issue later on where she does lax even more, because they are getting in a better place and she doesn't take her sobriety as serious as she should. But that's also the thing, because, like, the whole point is to, have the tools and preparedness to prepare yourself for going through life, and like, right, all this temptation, you don't want any bump, you want to have the tools at your disposal so that if anytime there's a bump in the road, you're prepared for it, you don't have to worry about it. So that ended up being like, just an interesting conversation. And like I said, I'm worried that like the other shoe is going to drop now that her and Frank are getting closer. So there's that. Then there's a whole situation with Daniel. Jerry's talking to like Harry's like, you need to kind of fix that. And so, but Abigail kind of jumps on Daniel being like, right, you want to blame me because he's like, right, you cut kind of corners and stuff like that, and you're doing what you're doing. Like the whole law firm, he's like, I don't even recognize it anymore. If you weren't doing what you're doing, my dad wouldn't be doing what he's doing. And she's like, really, that's what this is about? And she's like, let's face facts. You want to put it all on me, but like you're kind of your own biases of like you're just kind of yourself. I forgot what the exact wording was, but basically it's like your bias is going to reflect. You're going to only see things that correlate with your own bias. You refuse to kind of see anything else. And for her, it's like, the truth of the matter is, even if I wasn't here, Harry still wouldn't be giving you that, like, partnership. And it was kind of a tough pill to swallow, but I think even Daniel kind of agreed. Did not fix his attitude. Luckily, him and Lucy are in a better place at the end. He was like, hey, like, don't talk. We'll just surf together. But, hey, it's a step in the right direction. So there's that. Because Harry did try to talk to Daniel. It's like, hey, you keep what you kill. Whatever, like, cases you bring in, you get to keep 50%, and then we'll revisit this conversation. Daniel's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So it's like, yeah, that's still going to be an issue, and I'm sure he's still going to potentially take that out on Abby. Hopefully he's not half-assing his job going forward, but that line of Jerry being like, yeah, it's going to have consequences, I'm sure it is. Maybe even next episode, he's going to screw up big time because he's acting so lethargic on the case just because of he's acting like a kind of, I feel like he's talking about, he wants to jump on Abby about her professionalism. It's like, but you haven't been professional either. Yeah, like, yes, you're supposed to be working together on this case, and she's already working with your dad on something and doing this. She's doing double work, and you just kind of being so blasé about it. That's the whole thing. So there's that. Then there's the Lucy conversation, because she ends up talking to Abby, and Abby's like, right. Sometimes I wish I didn't know about Frank's one-night stand, but she's like, if I found out any other way, it would have been worse. Because she says explicitly, and that's the important thing, these things always come out. You can't hide it. Eventually it will come out, and it's better to hear it from you than find out some other way. So Lucy tells Maggie the truth. Well, a fraction of the truth. It's like, right, this person kissed me a couple months ago, and it's like, well, is that all that happened? And it's like, no, because she finally explains what it is. So I thought it was just the baby thing. It's we got married so soon, but she's like, we got married so fast because that's what you want. She's like, yes, but she didn't realize how much was going to change and how rapidly things were going to change the moment they got married. We don't go out and party like we used to, like hit the club up. But she's like, yeah, I can't show up to work with like 3 hours of sleep because it's just a byproduct of growing older. But it's that thing of, it's FOMO. It's like, oh, I'm missing out on certain aspects of my life, or rather what our lives used to be like beforehand, because now that you made this commitment, so much is changing. Like, once again, Maggie's really pushing the baby thing. I thought that was the crux of it, but it's like, that's a byproduct of a larger issue of just like, right, where we were before is I was happy about it, but so much has changed that I feel like we're kind of losing where we were. That's what the whole cheating thing's about. Once again, she didn't tell Maggie that she has slept with this woman at least maybe twice. Because she's like, oh, we made out. But it's like, well, we know you went to the stall with her in that bathroom at that bar. And it's like, so I can only assume you had sex. And who knows? We saw that one time, and then Abby saw you making out with her at a club. But, I mean, so who knows? And all the back and forth texting. So maybe those are the only 2 times, and maybe it's only been flirting through text. Who knows? Like, you still didn't tell her the whole truth, which you were like, cheating is cheating regardless. Even if it was just kissing, it's still like, you cheated on her, you shouldn't have done that. But that's also the problem. Like, cheating is like a hard thing to come back from, because that person loses trust, and he's like, how can I ever trust you again knowing you've done that? Especially because it seems like Maggie's had that issue beforehand. It's like, you did that knowing I have had an issue with a significant other cheating on me, and that kind of like, yeah, that stays with you, because it takes a while to kind of fully trust someone. Like, because you might kind of think like, right, this person cheated on me, and you probably might always be suspicious in the back of your mind, and you don't want that, because that's not a healthy thing to do. And like, the moment you're like, okay, I'm not going to think like that, what happens? Your wife is cheating on you. Like, yes, it was a kiss, but it's still like, no, you shouldn't be kissing other people. It's like, okay, you didn't kiss her back, but you didn't pull away. It's kind of the whole conversation. But it's like, once again, Maggie doesn't know. It's like, they had sex at least once that we're aware of. So it's like, it's such a slippery, because the way she answered it, kind of hesitating, like, no, nothing happened. It's like, it did, because the way she answered kind of proves that. But it's like, yeah, because now it's going to be even worse. It's like, she should have told the whole truth. It would have been hard to come back from, but that would have been something they could have worked towards. Now that you've said, right, we haven't had, that's all it was a kiss. So you're making it seem like it was a one-time thing months ago when this is a continuous thing. There's that. Two, you making it seem like it was just a kiss. So the moment the truth comes out, that she finds out that it's still ongoing and that you had sex, like, she's going to realize, oh, not only did you cheat, you're a liar. You know, you're a liar in so many regards. And that's what's going to make it impossible for them to fix this, because she'll always, like, in the back of her mind, she'll always wonder, like, right, because she might also start piecing together, you changed the code on your phone. It's like, why would you're a little nervous about me checking your messages. It's like, oh, something from Nina, you know? So Maggie's not thinking much of it because, but like now knowing what happened, it makes you go like, I might have to go revisit some of those moments I've had where I kind of brushed it off. Now in retrospect, she might go like, wait, what that was about? So, and because at the end, they end up running into each other at the beach. And like Maggie kind of doesn't think much of it, but I was like, this is the most awkward thing. I was like, wait, so she does, I was like, oh, so she didn't know you were married. But then later on, it's like, oh, you are married, but it's like, oh, we should say goodbye. And it's like, wow, she's fucked up for doing that, but also Lucy's fucked up for, like, it takes two to tangle. They're both at fault for that. But I'm like, wow, you know she's married. You just bumped into her wife and it's like, hey, let's have a goodbye, like soiree. And I'm like, really? I was like, wow, that's what I mean. Once again, cheating takes two to tangle. Like, you know, some cheating situations, one person might be a little more culpable than the other, but it's still, even if you don't want to go 50-50, it's still going to be like 60-40 at most, maybe, you know? So it's like, I wish Lucy didn't do that, especially because like your wife is like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, get ready for the night shift. I was like, is she going to be in the bathroom or whatever? But it didn't seem like that was the case. But it's like, she's going to get caught because it's like, oh, you did it one more time. And it's like, yeah, but one more time will lead to another time and to another time and another time, because it feels so good. It feels so nice because you're getting away with it. Like, you're going to get sloppy. You've already been sloppy. And it's just a matter of, once again, what Abby said, eventually it's going to happen. You're going to get caught. So the truth is going to come out eventually. And kind of a little side note thing in this episode, which I think is kind of sweet. It seems like Cecil likes Nina, and he tried to come over to her and like, oh, like when she was playing with Nico, and Nico was like XYZ, and he's like, what? Examine your zipper. And Cecil was so embarrassed. And I love Nico being like, and it happens to the best of us. I'm like, yeah. And you see that look on Nina's face. She felt bad, but I was like, oh, so Nina might actually be a little receptive to it, but it's just like Cecil worked himself up too much, you know, and once again, it's just like, oh, no one wants to embarrass, like, the most soul-crushing thing is when you embarrass yourself in front of the girl you like. I mean, just a person, I mean, I'm just coming from the position of like, well, I've liked girls. I'd probably say, like, if I was into dudes, I'd probably say the same thing of like, yeah, everyone knows what it's like to, like, feel that embarrassment of, like, embarrassing yourself in front of the person you like. It's like, God, it's the whole thing of, like, put me in the ditch and bury me. I want to die of embarrassment. You know, it's like we've all felt that at some point in time. You know, more so than others, I'm sure. But I'm sure I've felt that more so than others. But yeah, regardless, lot of really, really interesting things. I'm curious to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But God, I almost completely forgot. I made this whole talk about like, oh yeah, Abby's working on stuff with Harry. Yeah, I forgot. Like, yeah, they're working on the Crystal case. I'm like, oh, I do appreciate the continuous continuation of like that didn't happen off screen. It's like, no, we're dealing with it in this episode, and obviously she's trying to divide up like how much she's going to give her ex, like, you know, with the breakup and with a divorce. But they knew she was hiding stuff because it turns out she was getting her own show and she was going to be making more money, so she's trying to get all this settled before she gets new income. But the fact is that comes up later on. It's going to be like, wait, you're skirting around what you're supposed to do. So it's like, right, as your legal team, you need to tell us the truth and not lie to us. So they ended up finding this middle ground, making sure it's like, right, we could get things to kind of go more your way if you can make sure like Bailey needs a new studio, because remember your followers broke in and smashed the place up last episode. But it's like, yeah. So they come to a deal. Obviously, Abby's like, yeah, I'm going to do my job. Very much like the Elaine thing. It's just more of the situation with Elaine is like, hey, I like her. She is a friend. Crystal, I'm going to do my job and represent you the best I can, but I don't like you and all that you represent. Because to not forget the threatening situations and all that she had to deal with from Crystal's audience last episode. Which I also love the lawyer coming into it representing her ex. And it's just like, I love that actress because especially the way she plays like no nonsense, just kind of like blunt and everything. There were multiple times looking like, what? She's like, oh, like, you know, because we got to adjust for, like, you know, put it in a contract or whatever, so even if her income goes up or down, it won't kind of affect things. You know, it's like, none of us have a crystal ball. And she's like, Yeah, because that would be weird if you did. I'm like, she's so literal about it. It's like, yeah, it's almost like, why are you so weird? I like how she does that. Because her character from, a version of her character from, what was it? There was like a sweetness to her character in Travelers, but she was also a major douche in Travelers as well. So that's a very, very interesting, interesting thing, so. But yeah, so that was kind of settled. So I was like, okay, probably won't be seeing any more Crystal. Maybe we'll kind of hear her name in the background or something about her new show and everything. Because they were talking about the fact is because of like the divorce and everything, her audience isn't as strong as it was at one point in time. But I guess it's like, yeah, she might be on the upswing again when it comes to her career. Like, you never know how the tides will change. I mean, when you have your hardcores will follow you all the way through. But yeah, now we're kind of done covering everything in the episode. I can't believe I almost forgot about that. But I'll probably keep that in the whole aspect of me remembering at the last second, when I was going to do the outro. But either way, till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.